My father slammed his palm against the mahogany dining table so hard that every crystal glass trembled, and in the sudden silence that followed, he pointed his finger directly at me and said I was a thief. The word hung in the air like smoke from a blown-out candle. Thief. My fork froze halfway to my mouth, a piece of glazed ham suspended in the space between the plate and my lips. I could not move. I could not breathe. Around me, the dining room that had been filled with laughter and Christmas music just seconds before went completely still. I looked at my father, Victor Callahan, 61 years old, patriarch of one of Savannah's oldest families, and I saw something in his eyes I had never seen directed at me before. Not disappointment, not frustration, pure, calculated rage. He accused me of stealing from my own family. He said I had secretly transferred my grandmother Eleanor's trust fund into my name. He said I had forged documents to take ownership of her historic mansion on Victory Drive. He said I had been siphoning money for years while pretending to struggle in a tiny apartment in Atlanta. I had spent the last 4 years surviving on instant noodles and borrowed hope, and now my own father was calling me a thief in front of everyone I had ever loved. The Christmas tree lights blinked cheerfully in the corner, red and green reflections dancing across the horrified faces of my family. Bing Crosby crooned about white Christmases from a speaker somewhere in the living room. The smell of roasted turkey and rosemary still hung in the air, mixing with the pine scent of the fresh-cut tree. 30 minutes earlier, I had stood on the front porch of this house, my childhood home, gathering courage to ring the doorbell. The Callahan mansion sat on a tree-lined street in the historic district, white columns framing a wraparound porch, Spanish moss draping from ancient oaks like gray lace. Every window glowed with warm light. From inside I could hear voices and laughter. 3 years. I had stayed away for 3 years, living in Atlanta, working temp jobs, telling myself I was building independence. The truth was simpler and sadder. I had felt unwelcome in my own family for as long as I could remember, and leaving had been easier than fighting for a place at a table where I was never quite wanted. But this year, my mother had sent a card. An actual card, handwritten, asking me to come home for Christmas. "Let us be a family again," she had written. I had stared at those words for a week before buying a bus ticket I could barely afford. My mother, Patricia, greeted me at the door with an air kiss that landed somewhere near my left ear. She looked me up and down and said I looked tired. My sister Colleen arrived minutes later in a Mercedes designer bag on her arm, her husband Derek trailing behind with their daughter Sophie. Colleen smirked at my simple dress, the nicest thing I owned, and whispered something to our mother that made them both laugh. But Derek had hugged me warmly, which surprised me. And when no one else was listening, he leaned close and whispered 2 words that should have told me everything. Be careful. I did not understand then. I thought he meant careful about family drama, about old tensions, about the usual Callahan dysfunction. I had no idea he was warning me about an ambush. Sophie, my 7-year-old niece, had run to me with her arms open wide. "Auntie Meredith, I missed you so much." That hug, that genuine, uncomplicated love from a child, had almost made me believe the evening might turn out all right. And there was Aunt Vivian, my grandmother Eleanor's younger sister, sitting quietly in a corner chair. She was the only one who had visited me in Atlanta, twice, bringing casseroles and conversation, and never once asking why I had left. When I walked in, she gave me a long look I could not quite read, something between sadness and warning. Dinner began peacefully enough. My father carved the turkey with ceremonial precision. My mother orchestrated the side dishes like a general commanding troops. Colleen dominated the conversation, talking about her real estate business, her new kitchen renovation, Sophie's private school achievements. No one asked about my life. No one seemed to notice I had barely spoken. Then my father asked about my little job in Atlanta. His tone made the word little sound like an insult. I explained I had been doing administrative work, temp positions mostly, saving what I could. Colleen snorted. "Still saving," she said. At your age. My mother mentioned grandmother Eleanor then, how she would have wanted us all together for the holidays. I saw Aunt Vivian's hand tighten around her wine glass. Her knuckles went white. I wondered why. And then Sophie, innocent Sophie, looked up from her mashed potatoes and asked a question that made my blood run cold. "Mommy, why did you say Auntie Meredith is in trouble?" Colleen hushed her sharply. Derek's jaw tightened. My stomach dropped. "What trouble?" I wanted to ask. But before I could speak, my father set down his carving knife. He cleared his throat. The room went silent. He looked around the table slowly, letting the tension build, and then he turned his gaze directly to me. That was when he slammed his hand on the table. That was when he called me a thief. Now, frozen in my chair, I watched my mother stand up. Her face wore an expression of practiced disappointment, the same look she had given me 1,000 times growing up when I failed to meet some impossible standard. She shook her head slowly. "We have proof," she said. Her voice was calm and cold. "We have bank statements, transfer records, your signature on documents you thought we would never find." Colleen reached under the table and produced a manila folder. She slid it across to me with something like triumph in her eyes. I recognized that look. She had worn it every time she got me in trouble as children, every time she successfully convinced our parents that something was my fault instead of hers. "Open it," she said. "Go ahead. Explain yourself." My hands were shaking as I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements I had never seen, from accounts I did not know existed, all bearing my name. There were transfer authorizations with signatures that looked like mine but were not quite right. The M was wrong. The way the H connected to the A in Callahan was off. Someone had studied my signature carefully. Someone had practiced. And in that moment, looking at the forgeries, I knew exactly whose handwriting those signatures actually resembled. I looked up at Colleen. She smiled. My mother spoke again. "We are giving you one chance, Meredith. One chance to admit what you did. Sign everything back over to the family. Do it now, and we will not involve the authorities." My father leaned forward. "The police are one phone call away," he said. "Fraud, forgery, theft from your own grandmother's estate. You will go to prison." Colleen added her piece. "We have everything documented. Your signatures, your bank records. There is no way out of this." I looked around the table at the faces of my family. My father's self-righteous rage, my mother's calculated cruelty, my sister's barely hidden triumph. Derek staring at his plate, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Sophie confused and frightened. And Aunt Vivian, pale as paper, gripping the table edge like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Something shifted inside me. I thought about the last 6 months. The investigation I had conducted in secret. The lawyer I had hired. The evidence I had gathered. The criminal complaint I had filed just 2 days ago. They thought I was defenseless. They thought I knew nothing. They had invited me here to humiliate me, to force a confession for crimes I did not commit, to cover their own theft with my silence. They had made a terrible mistake. I set my napkin on the table. I straightened my spine. I looked at my mother, who was reaching for her phone, preparing to call the police. And I said the words that made every single one of them freeze. "Go ahead and call them. Actually, you do not need to bother. They should be here in about 5 minutes." The silence that followed my words was absolute. Not the comfortable quiet of a pause in conversation, but the suffocating stillness that comes when the air itself seems to freeze. I watched my father's face shift through 3 distinct expressions in the span of 2 seconds. Confusion first, then disbelief, and finally something I had never seen from him before. Fear. My mother's hand stopped halfway to her phone. Her fingers hovered there, suspended in the space between threat and action, as if she had forgotten how to complete the motion. She stared at me with her mouth slightly open, the carefully constructed mask of maternal disappointment cracking at the edges. "What did you just say?" My father's voice came out rough, stripped of its usual commanding authority. I did not repeat myself. I did not need to. The words hung in the air between us, gaining weight with every passing second. Instead, I folded my hands on the table and waited. Colleen recovered first. She always did. Even as children, she had possessed an almost supernatural ability to adapt her strategy mid-conflict, to pivot from one angle of attack to another without losing momentum. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that fooled no one. "She is bluffing," Colleen said. She looked around the table, seeking allies. "This is exactly what I told you she would do. Deflect, confuse, try to turn this back on us. She has been planning this for years." My mother seized on this narrative like a drowning woman grabbing driftwood. "Of course she is bluffing." She picked up her phone, her confidence visibly rebuilding. "Meredith, this is beneath you. Making threats you cannot possibly follow through on. I am calling the police right now, and we will see who they believe." She began dialing. I let her. Derek shifted in his chair. I caught the movement in my peripheral vision and turned slightly to look at him. He had gone pale, paler than anyone else at the table. His hands gripped the edge of his seat so hard I could see the tendons standing out against his skin. He knew something. He had known something all along. That whispered warning at the door suddenly made terrible sense. Sophie tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, what is happening? Why is everyone yelling?" Derek pulled her close, murmuring something I could not hear. But his eyes never left mine. In them I saw not accusation, but something closer to relief. As if he had been waiting for this moment, dreading it, and hoping for it in equal measure. My mother had 911 on her screen. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She looked at me, one eyebrow raised, daring me to back down. I did not back down. I had spent 4 years backing down. 4 years of struggling in a city that did not want me, working jobs that led nowhere, wondering why every opportunity seemed to slip through my fingers like water. 4 years of instant noodles and borrowed hope and sleepless nights in an apartment so small I could touch 3 walls from my bed. I remembered a particular Christmas 2 years ago. I had been working a temp position at a logistics company, filing paperwork for $8.25 an hour. My assignment ended on December 23rd. No warning, no explanation, just a thank you for your service and a final check that barely covered rent. I spent Christmas Eve in my apartment alone, eating ramen noodles with an egg cracked into the broth because I could not afford anything else. I had called home that night. My mother answered on the 6th ring. She sounded distracted, annoyed at the interruption. In the background I could hear laughter, music, the sounds of celebration. I asked if I could come home for the holidays. She said it was not a good time. She said Colleen was hosting this year and the guest list was already finalized. She said maybe next year. Then she hung up. I sat in that cold apartment, listening to my neighbors argue through the thin walls, and I wondered what I had done to deserve being erased from my own family. Now I knew. I had done nothing. That was the point. They had needed me gone. They had needed me struggling, desperate, too poor to ask questions or hire lawyers or look too closely at the inheritance I never knew existed. My mother pressed the call button. The phone began to ring. Colleen leaned forward, triumph bright in her eyes. "You see?" she said to the table at large. "She has nothing. This is a desperate bluff from a desperate woman. By this time tomorrow, she will be in a cell where she belongs." Sophie's small voice cut through the tension. "Mommy, not now, Sophie." "But Mommy," the little girl persisted. She was looking at me with those clear, innocent eyes. "Why did you tell me not to talk about the papers? The ones in Daddy's office with Auntie Meredith's name on them?" The room went still again. Colleen's face drained of color. Derek closed his eyes like a man who had just watched the last domino fall. "Sophie, be quiet." Colleen's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "But you said it was a secret." Sophie's lower lip trembled. "You said Auntie Meredith was bad, and she took things that did not belong to her. But Auntie Meredith is not bad. She is the nice one. She always sends me birthday cards." Something cracked in my chest. Through everything, through 4 years of exile and silence, I had never forgotten Sophie's birthday. I had sent cards every year, never knowing if they arrived, never receiving acknowledgement. But she had gotten them. She remembered. My mother was speaking into her phone now, her voice tight and controlled. "Yes, I need to report a crime, a theft, family financial fraud. I need officers at this address immediately." Aunt Vivian suddenly stood up. Her chair scraped against the hardwood floor with a sound like a wounded animal. Her face was white as paper, her eyes fixed on something none of us could see. "Eleanor knew," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. My God, she knew this would happen. "Vivian, sit down." My father's command came out strangled. "This does not concern you." She knew. Aunt Vivian repeated the words like a prayer or a confession. She told me. She made me promise. And I was too much of a coward to say anything. She turned to look at me, and in her eyes I saw tears forming. She saw years of guilt finally demanding release. "I am so sorry, Meredith. I am so sorry." I did not understand what she meant. Not yet. But I filed it away, another piece of a puzzle I was still assembling. My mother ended her call with the police. She set the phone down with exaggerated care and smiled at me. A cold, triumphant smile that did not reach her eyes. "They are on their way," she announced. 20 minutes. I suggest you use that time to think very carefully about your next words." I looked at her. At my father. At Colleen, who was still trying to silence Sophie. At Derek, who sat with his head bowed like a man awaiting judgment. At Aunt Vivian, trembling in her chair. And then I heard it. Distant at first, but growing closer. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Then another, doors opening, footsteps on gravel. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who had spent 6 months preparing for this exact moment. "They did not need 20 minutes, I said, because I called them 2 days ago." The doorbell rang. The police were coming. My family had no idea that I had spent 6 months preparing for this moment. It all started with a letter that was never supposed to reach me. 6 months before that Christmas dinner, I was sitting in my cramped Atlanta apartment when an envelope changed everything. The building should have been condemned years ago. 400 square feet on the 3rd floor of a walk-up with no elevator, stairs that creaked with every step, and a window air conditioning unit that rattled constantly but barely cooled anything during the brutal Georgia summers. My kitchen was so small I could touch both walls with my arms stretched out. I slept on a mattress on the floor because I could not afford a bed frame. That particular evening in June, I had just finished an 8-hour shift at a temp agency doing data entry. My feet ached, my back was sore. My dinner was instant ramen with an egg cracked into it and a handful of frozen vegetables because that was what I could afford. I had checked my bank account that morning. $217 until my next paycheck. Rent was due in 5 days, $650. The math never worked out. 3 years since I had left Savannah. 3 years of silence from my family. No calls, no help, no acknowledgement that I existed. I told myself I was better off. Some nights I almost believed it. My landlord slid the mail under my door because the mailbox in the lobby had been broken for months. Bills, junk mail, a credit card offer I would never qualify for, and one envelope that looked different from the rest. The paper was heavy, expensive. An embossed logo glinted in the lamplight. The letter had been forwarded from my old address, the one I had used before I moved to this particular hellhole. The return address read, First Coastal Bank and Trust, Savannah, Georgia. I could not imagine why a Savannah bank would be writing to me. I did not have any accounts there. I did not have accounts anywhere except a checking account with $43 in it, and a savings account I had stopped looking at because seeing the number made me want to cry. I opened the envelope. The letter was printed on heavy cream-colored paper with a formal letterhead. My name appeared at the top, typed with unnecessary precision. Ms. Meredith Ann Callahan. The subject line read, Unusual Activity Alert. Eleanor Beaumont Memorial Trust. I read those words 3 times. Eleanor Beaumont was my grandmother. She had passed away 4 years earlier. I had been at the funeral, sitting in the back row because no one had saved me a seat with the family. No one had mentioned me during the service. No one had spoken to me afterward except Aunt Vivian, who had held my hand and told me Eleanor had loved me very much. I had never heard of any memorial trust. The letter explained that the bank was writing to inform me of significant withdrawals from the trust account. As the named beneficiary and account holder, they required my verification of recent transactions totaling over $800,000. They requested I contact them immediately. I read the letter again. Then again, the words refused to make sense. Named beneficiary. Account holder, $800,000. There had to be a mistake. Another Meredith Callahan somewhere. A coincidence of names. But the letter had my correct middle name. My old address was accurate. The last 4 digits of my social security number, printed for verification purposes, matched mine exactly. My hands were shaking. My ramen grew cold, forgotten. Something was very wrong. I found the bank's phone number online and dialed before I could talk myself out of it. 20 minutes on hold, listening to tinny classical music, pressing buttons to navigate an automated system. Finally, a human voice. First Coastal Bank and Trust, this is Denise. How may I assist you? I explained I had received a letter about unusual activity on an account. I did not have an account number. Denise asked for my full name, date of birth, and social security number. I heard her typing. A long pause followed. Yes, Ms. Callahan, she said. I see your account here. The Eleanor Beaumont Memorial Trust, established March 15th, 4 years ago. You are listed as the sole beneficiary and primary account holder. Current balance is $143,212. I asked her to repeat the number. $143,212, she said. That is the current balance. My voice came out strangled. What was the original deposit? Another pause. She was checking records. $2,400,000. The room tilted. Over $2 million had been deposited 4 years ago. Now only $143,000 remained. Someone had withdrawn more than $2 million from an account I did not know existed. An account in my name. I asked who had authorized the withdrawals. Denise hesitated. According to our records, she said carefully. You did, Ms. Callahan. We have your signed authorization forms for each transaction. I told her I had never signed anything. I told her I had never been to her bank. I told her I had been living in Atlanta for 3 years and had never accessed this account. A long silence followed. Ms. Callahan, Denise said finally, I think you should come in person. There are documents you should see. And perhaps you should bring identification. Multiple forms. When can you come to Savannah? 3 days later, I was on a Greyhound bus. 7 hours overnight, the cheapest ticket I could find. $47 I could not spare. I arrived in Savannah at 6 in the morning, exhausted and terrified, and walked to the bank because I could not afford a cab. I waited outside on a bench until they opened at 9. The bank was a historic building downtown, marble floors and hushed atmosphere. Everyone wore suits. I was in my cleanest jeans and a blouse I had borrowed from a coworker. I felt out of place, like I did not belong there. Then I reminded myself that someone had stolen over $2 million using my name. I belonged there more than anyone. The account manager was a woman named Catherine, mid-40s, professional but visibly uncomfortable. She led me to a private office and spread documents across her desk. The trust establishment papers were dated 4 years ago, 1 month after my grandmother's death. My grandmother's signature was there, notarized, legitimate. I was named as sole beneficiary. This part was real. Grandmother Eleanor had left me this money. Then Catherine showed me the withdrawal authorizations. 12 separate forms over 4 years. Each one authorized transfers ranging from $100,000 to $300,000. Each one bearing my signature. Each one notarized in Savannah. I stared at my own handwriting. Except it was not my handwriting. It was close. Very close. Someone had studied my signature carefully, but the M was wrong, too looped. The H in Callahan did not connect the way I wrote it. The pen pressure was lighter, more hesitant. And I recognized the style. The same hand that used to forge excuse notes in high school. The same careful imitation that had gotten me grounded for a month when I was 12, blamed for a broken vase I had never touched. Colleen. Catherine showed me where the money had gone. 3 accounts. 2 personal accounts with names redacted for privacy, and 1 business account, Mercer Property Holdings LLC. My blood went cold. Mercer. That was Derek's last name, which meant it was Colleen's company. There is also the matter of the real estate holdings, Catherine said quietly. The Eleanor Beaumont estate on Victory Drive was also in your name. It was transferred 18 months ago to Mercer Property Holdings LLC, grandmother's house, the beautiful historic mansion where I had spent my happiest summers, where she had read to me in the library and taught me to bake in the kitchen and shown me the names of every flower in her garden. They had taken that too. Catherine handed me one more document, a photocopy, slightly faded, the last will and testament of Eleanor Beaumont. I read the provisions with shaking hands. To my son Victor, I leave $10,000 and my forgiveness for his years of neglect. To my granddaughter Colleen, I leave $10,000 and my hope that she learns the difference between wanting and deserving. To my beloved granddaughter Meredith, who sat with me when no one else would, who read to me when my eyes failed, who loved me without condition, I leave the entirety of my remaining estate. The trust fund, the mansion, the jewelry, shares in the family company, everything. Grandmother had left me everything, and my family had stolen it all. I left the bank with evidence in my hands and vengeance in my heart. But rage without a plan is just noise. I needed someone who could turn my fury into justice. 2 weeks after my visit to First Coastal Bank, I found myself climbing a creaky staircase in a converted Victorian house near Forsyth Park. The building smelled like old books and furniture polish. A frosted glass door at the top bore gold letters spelling out James Whitmore, attorney at law. Finding him had not been easy. I spent those 2 weeks searching online for lawyers who specialized in inheritance fraud and document forgery. Most wanted retainers I could never afford. $5,000, $10,000. One firm quoted $15,000 just for an initial consultation. I almost gave up 3 times. Then I found a legal aid website that mentioned pro bono consultations for fraud victims. One name kept appearing in the forums, James Whitmore. The reviews said he took cases others would not touch. One testimonial stayed with me. He believed me when no one else did. I called his office expecting a receptionist. James answered himself. Small practice, he explained later. Just him and a paralegal. I summarized my situation in 3 sentences. Grandmother left me everything. Family forged my signature. Stole over $2 million. A long pause followed. Then he said 5 words that changed my life. Can you come to Savannah? His office matched his voice. No pretense, no polish, just walls of legal books and a desk buried under case files. James Whitmore was 45 years old with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses perpetually pushed up on his forehead. He had been a prosecutor once, he told me. Left the district attorney's office after a case involving a wealthy family who bought their way out of charges. Now he specialized in holding wealthy families accountable. He asked my family name. When I told him Callahan, something shifted in his expression. His eyes sharpened. I have heard stories about them, he said. He did not elaborate, but I understood. In Savannah, everyone knew everyone's secrets. They just pretended not to. I spread my documents across his conference table. The trust establishment papers, the withdrawal authorizations, the transfer records, my grandmother's will, my own identification, signature samples, tax returns proving I had lived in Atlanta for 3 years, and a timeline I had written at 2 a.m, hands shaking, connecting every date and dollar I could find. James photographed everything, made notes in a leather-bound journal, asked questions I had not thought to ask. When did your grandmother pass away? 4 years ago, March. I was 25. Were you at the reading of the will? No, I was not invited. My father said there was nothing to read. He told me grandmother had very little to leave anyone. The first lie. The foundation for everything that followed. When did you last see your grandmother before she died? The week before. I visited her in the hospital alone. No one else was there. She was weak, but her mind was clear. She squeezed my hand and told me she had made sure I would be taken care of. I thought she meant emotionally. I thought she was talking about memories, about love. Now I understood what she really meant. James sent my signature samples to a forensic document examiner, a former FBI specialist with 23 years of experience. The results came back in 10 days. My genuine signatures versus the withdrawal authorizations showed clear differences. The examiner found a 97% match to a different hand. The forger had studied my signature carefully, but could not eliminate their own unconscious habits. Pen pressure patterns, letter spacing, the way certain loops connected. James asked if I had samples of my sister's handwriting. I remembered a box in my closet, full of things I could not bring myself to throw away. Birthday cards, notes from years ago, evidence of a sisterhood that had never really existed. I provided copies. The results confirmed what I already knew. 97% match to Colleen's handwriting patterns. My sister had forged every document. The same sister who used to forge our mother's signature on school permission slips. The same sister who had practiced deception her entire life. But James found more. While investigating the property transfer, he discovered something I had not known to look for. Grandmother Eleanor had owned 35% of Beaumont Properties, a real estate company she founded with her late husband decades ago. Those shares were part of her estate. According to corporate filings, the shares had been sold 2 years after her death. The buyer was Callahan Holdings LLC, my father's company. The sale price was $200,000. The actual market value was over $1.2 million. Authorization for the sale bore my forged signature, notarized in Savannah on a date when I was working a temp job in Atlanta, documented by time cards and security camera footage. They did not just steal your inheritance, James said quietly. They bought your grandmother's legacy for pennies on the dollar. Your father now controls the company she built, using documents forged in your name. I sat in his office and calculated the total. The trust fund, approximately $2.3 million withdrawn. The Victory Drive mansion, valued at over $1 million. The company shares, worth another $1.2 million. Over $4.5 million. My grandmother's entire life's work, stolen by the people who were supposed to love me. But James was not finished. There is something else, he said. Something that does not involve money. But you need to see it. His paralegal was a young woman named Nina, sharp and efficient, with a background in information technology. James had asked her to look into something. Anonymous reports sent to my potential employers over the years. I had applied to dozens of positions after college, entry-level management, administrative roles, anything stable. I got interviews, sometimes second rounds, but never offers, always rejected at the final stage. I assumed it was bad luck, wrong timing, the economy, my own inadequacy. Nina showed me the truth. 11 emails sent over 3 years, anonymous accounts but traceable through IP records. All originated from the same residential internet connection. My family's home in Savannah. The emails went to human resources departments at companies where I had applied. They claimed to be from former colleagues or concerned parties. They made allegations. Poor work ethic, unreliability, conflicts with coworkers. And one phrase that appeared in multiple messages, a phrase that made my vision blur with rage. She has a history of theft within her own family. I would not trust her with company resources. They accused me of being a thief, while they were stealing from me. They destroyed my career to keep me poor and desperate, so I would never have the resources to discover what they had done. Nina's analysis suggested 2 authors. Some emails were formal, corporate in tone, carefully phrased, Patricia's style. Others were more emotional, filled with personal attacks and specific details only a family member would know. Colleen's voice, my mother and sister, working together for years to ensure I would fail. James laid out my options. We could file immediately. Criminal complaint, civil lawsuit, emergency injunction, fast and aggressive. But they would hire expensive lawyers, delay proceedings, possibly destroy evidence. Or we could wait. Build the case quietly. Document everything with timestamps. Choose the moment of confrontation strategically. The element of surprise could be devastating. I thought about what I wanted. Not just the money, not just legal victory. I wanted them to feel what I had felt. The shock, the helplessness, the betrayal. I wanted to watch their faces when they realized their perfect crime had unraveled. 3 weeks earlier, I had received a Christmas card from my mother. First contact in 2 years. We miss you. Please come home for Christmas. Let us be a family again. An invitation to the scene of the crime. They were so confident I knew nothing. So certain they had won. James asked when I wanted to act. I told him Christmas. When the whole family would be together. When there was nowhere to hide. He nodded slowly. A grim smile crossed his face. Then we have work to do. The doorbell rang twice, clear and sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade. No one at the table moved. They sat frozen in their chairs, staring at the foyer entrance as if expecting something monstrous to emerge from the shadows. My father recovered first. He pushed back from the table, straightening his jacket with hands that trembled slightly. I will handle this, he announced. His voice carried the tone of a man reclaiming control of his own home. This is still my house. He walked toward the front door with forced confidence. My mother started to follow, then stopped, uncertain for the first time all evening. Colleen's triumphant expression had dissolved into something more complicated. Confusion. The first flickers of fear. I remained seated. Let them see me calm. Let them wonder. The front door opened. I heard my father's voice, welcoming and authoritative. Officers, thank you for coming. I am Victor Callahan. I was just about to call you myself. We have a situation with my daughter. A male voice interrupted him. Firm, professional, cutting through my father's practiced charm like it was nothing. Mr. Callahan, we are not here on your call. We are here at the request of Ms. Meredith Callahan. The silence that followed was absolute. I heard my father's voice again, smaller now, stripped of its commanding edge. What? Another voice, female this time. Is Ms. Meredith Callahan present? We need to speak with her. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress. Every eye in the dining room tracked my movement. My mother had gone pale. Colleen gripped the edge of the table like she might fall without it. Derek had closed his eyes, his shoulders slumping with what looked strangely like relief. Please come in, I called toward the foyer. We have a lot to discuss. 2 police officers entered the dining room. The man was in his mid-40s, with tired eyes that had seen everything twice. His nameplate read Reynolds. The woman was younger, sharp-eyed and alert. Officer Chen. Both wore the professional demeanor of people about to deliver very bad news. My father followed them into the room, his face a mask of disbelief. He looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger, not disappointment. Genuine confusion, as if I had suddenly become a stranger. Meredith, he said, what have you done? I did not answer him. Instead, I turned to the officers. Thank you for coming. I know Christmas Eve is not an ideal time. Officer Reynolds nodded. We received your complaint 2 days ago, Ms. Callahan. Given the evidence provided, the district attorney felt this warranted immediate attention. A third figure appeared in the doorway, James Whitmore, my attorney, carrying his familiar briefcase. He wore a professional Navy suit and moved with the calm confidence of a man who had prepared for this moment as thoroughly as I had. Everyone, I said, this is James Whitmore, my attorney. My mother made a small sound, something between a gasp and a whimper. Her face had gone from pale to gray. She recognized the name. James had prosecuted a fraud case against one of my parents' business associates years ago. He had won, decisively. This is outrageous. Colleen found her voice, pitching it toward the officers. This is a private family matter. Our sister has clearly manipulated you with lies. We are the victims here. She is the one who stole from us. Officer Chen's expression did not change. Ma'am, we are here to investigate allegations of fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. Those are criminal matters, not family matters. My mother tried a different approach. She dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, summoning tears with practiced ease. Officers, please. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. Our daughter has always had difficulties. She has never quite fit in. Whatever she has told you, it is not the full story. James set his briefcase on the sideboard and opened it with deliberate precision. Mrs. Callahan, I understand this is difficult, but we have documented evidence of serious crimes: forgery, fraud, embezzlement, theft of inheritance. These are not misunderstandings. These are felonies. Colleen stood abruptly, pointing at me. This is insane. She is the one who stole from us. We have proof right here. She grabbed the manila folder she had shown me earlier, the one filled with documents bearing my forged signature. Show them. Show them what she did. Officer Reynolds took the folder calmly. He flipped through the pages, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up at Colleen. Ma'am, we have already seen these documents. They are part of why we are here. Colleen's confidence wavered. What? No. These prove that someone committed forgery, Officer Reynolds said. The question is who? He handed the folder to James. My attorney removed a large envelope from his briefcase and extracted several documents, enlarged to poster size. One of the officers had brought a portable easel, which they set up near the head of the table. James began his presentation with the calm precision of a surgeon beginning an operation. On the left side, he said, positioning the first enlargement, you will see verified samples of Meredith Callahan's signature, from her Atlanta bank account, her tax returns, employment documents, all notarized, all time-stamped, all authenticated. He positioned a second enlargement beside the first. On the right side, the signatures appearing on the trust fund withdrawal authorizations, the property transfer documents, the company share sales. Even from across the room, the differences were visible. The loop of the M, the connection between letters, the angle of the strokes. These signatures were examined by a forensic document specialist, James continued, a former FBI analyst with 23 years of experience. His conclusion is that there is a 97% certainty these are two different hands. The documents your family presented as evidence of Meredith's theft are actually evidence of forgery against her. My father's face had turned the color of old brick. He gripped the back of his chair, knuckles white. Experts can be wrong, he said. Experts can be bought. This proves nothing. James ignored him and produced another document. The withdrawal authorizations are dated across 4 years, each one supposedly signed by Meredith in Savannah. But we have records showing Meredith's location on each of those dates. He displayed a timeline. Employment records from Atlanta temp agencies, apartment lease documentation, bank card transactions made in Atlanta on the same days the documents were supposedly signed in Savannah. One date showed medical records from a doctor's appointment 250 miles away. Meredith could not have signed these documents in Savannah, James said, because she was in Atlanta. Someone else signed her name. Someone committed fraud. I watched my family's reactions. My father's jaw clenched and unclenched. My mother had stopped crying, her face now a mask of calculation. Colleen's eyes darted around the room, looking for escape routes that did not exist. Under the table, I caught a glimpse of her hands moving. She was texting someone on her phone, hidden beneath the tablecloth. Derek sat motionless, staring at the evidence with an expression of grim resignation. He had known. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to warn me when I arrived. Enough to look relieved when the police walked in. Sophie had fallen asleep on a couch in the corner, exhausted by the tension she could not understand. Small mercies. Aunt Vivian spoke for the first time since her cryptic outburst earlier. Her voice was quiet but steady. How much did they take? James consulted his notes. Over $2.3 million from the trust fund. A historic mansion valued at over $1 million. Company shares worth approximately $1.2 million. Total documented theft exceeds $4.5 million. The number landed like a bomb. Even Officer Chen's professional composure flickered slightly. My mother made one last attempt. Officers, please. My daughter is clearly disturbed. She has concocted this elaborate fantasy to hurt her family. Whatever documents this lawyer has produced, they are fabrications. We are the victims here. Officer Reynolds looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned to James. Mr. Whitmore, do you have documentation of when these forgeries were allegedly committed? James nodded and produced another folder. Every withdrawal, every transfer, every signature, dated and time-stamped, cross-referenced with Meredith's verified location records, notary logs that show discrepancies, printer metadata that reveals documents were created months after their supposed execution dates. He laid each piece of evidence on the table, building a wall of proof that grew higher with every document. There is also the matter of the property transfer, James continued. The Eleanor Beaumont estate on Victory Drive was sold to Mercer Property Holdings LLC for $75,000. Market value exceeds $1 million. The authorization bears Meredith's forged signature. Colleen flinched at the company name. Her company. Her crime. My father tried one more time. This is circumstantial. None of this proves who, actually. James cut him off. We also have IP records tracing anonymous emails sent to Meredith's potential employers over 3 years. Emails that destroyed her career with false allegations, all originating from this address. The room went silent. Then, from across the table, Derek stood up. His voice was quiet, but clear. I have information. Things I should have said a long time ago. There is a safe in the study. I know the combination. And what is inside will answer every question you have. Derek led the way to the study, Officer Reynolds beside him. The rest of us followed in a strange procession through the darkened hallway. My father's footsteps were heavy behind me. My mother's heels clicked against the hardwood in an unsteady rhythm. Colleen had gone silent, her face pale in the dim light. The study had been my grandmother's favorite room. Dark wood paneling lined the walls. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves held volumes she had collected over a lifetime. An oil painting of Eleanor Beaumont hung above the fireplace, her eyes seeming to watch everything below. The room smelled of old leather and secrets. I remembered sitting in the worn leather chair by the window, listening to my grandmother read aloud from whatever book had captured her interest that week. She had loved this room. She had lived in this room during her final years. Now it belonged to my father, filled with his trophies and his ego. A framed photograph sat on the antique desk. My father, my mother, and Colleen posed in front of this very house. I looked closer and felt something cold settle in my chest. The original photo had included me. I remembered the day it was taken. But in this version, I had been cropped out. Erased from the family portrait as thoroughly as they had tried to erase me from my grandmother's legacy. Derek moved to the bookshelf on the far wall. He shifted several volumes aside, revealing a panel that blended seamlessly with the wood. Behind it sat a safe with a digital keypad and a combination dial. Colleen thinks I do not pay attention, he said quietly. She talks on the phone when she thinks I am asleep. She leaves documents in her office at home and assumes I never look, but I have been watching, listening, waiting for someone to finally ask the right questions. His hands moved over the keypad with familiar precision. A series of beeps, then the heavy click of the lock disengaging. The safe door swung open. Inside were stacks of folders, a fireproof box, several flash drives, and bundles of cash bound with rubber bands. More than anyone expected. This was not just about my inheritance. This was everything. James Whitmore pulled on latex gloves before touching anything. Evidence handling, he explained. He began removing items one by one, photographing each before setting it on the desk. Officer Reynolds took notes while Officer Chen observed from the doorway, keeping watch on the rest of the family. The first discovery confirmed what I already suspected. Trust fund withdrawal authorizations, all 12 of them bearing my forged signature. But there was something I had not known about, a second signature line on each form. Witnessed and approved by Patricia Callahan. My mother's genuine handwriting, no forgery. She had signed every single withdrawal herself. I stared at her signature. All those years of claiming the family was struggling. All those times she told me they could not help with my rent or my bills or my groceries. Meanwhile, she was approving the theft of millions of dollars that belonged to me. James moved to the property transfer documents. The Victory Drive mansion, sold to Mercer Property Holdings for $75,000. He read the figures aloud for the officers. A historic Savannah home valued at over $1 million. Sold to your sister's company for $75,000. That is not a sale. That is theft with paperwork. The company shares came next. Grandmother Eleanor's 35% stake in Beaumont Properties, the real estate company she had founded decades ago. Sold to Callahan Holdings, my father's company, for $200,000. Actual value at the time of sale exceeded $1.2 million. James pulled bank statements from another folder, wire transfer confirmations, and a handwritten ledger in Colleen's distinctive script, tracking every dollar that had been stolen and where it had gone. The numbers were staggering. My parents' joint account had received $800,000 over 4 years. The money funded a vacation home in Charleston I had never heard of, new cars, country club memberships, the lifestyle they claimed they could barely afford. Colleen and Derek's account received $1.1 million. Designer shopping, private school tuition for Sophie, business ventures that Colleen described to everyone as barely breaking even. Derek's voice cut through the recitation. I never saw that money. She told me the business was struggling. She said we were living on tight margins. A third account appeared in the records. Offshore, Cayman Islands. $400,000. Signatory listed as Victor Callahan. Purpose unknown. From the dining room, we could hear Colleen's voice rising. Officer Chen had stayed behind with her and my mother, and the walls of the old house did little to muffle the argument that had erupted. This was your idea. Colleen's words carried clearly. You came to me. You said no one would ever find out. My mother's response was just as loud. Do not you dare put this on me. You volunteered. You said you knew how to copy her signature. You said it was easy. My father's face had gone gray. He gripped the doorframe of the study, watching the evidence pile up, listening to his wife and daughter tear each other apart. James found something else in the safe. A folder marked in handwriting I did not recognize. Eleanor, it read. Destroy. Inside were medical records from my grandmother's final weeks, power of attorney documents naming my father as decision-maker. The POA was dated 1 week before Eleanor's death. Her signature was shaky, barely legible. A doctor's note was attached. Patient exhibits signs of confusion. Decision-making capacity questionable. They got power of attorney when she was too weak to understand what she was signing, James said. His voice was flat, professional, but I could hear the disgust beneath it. Then they used it to access accounts and position themselves to take everything, before she even died. A smaller piece of paper was clipped to the POA, a handwritten note in Eleanor's trembling script. Victor will not tell me what I signed. Something is wrong. V knows. V will help MV Vivian. My grandmother had reached out to her sister. She had known something was wrong. She had tried to protect me, but she had been too weak, too confused, too manipulated by the people who should have protected her. I thought about my grandmother in that hospital room, surrounded by family who only wanted to know what they could take, dying alone except for the granddaughter they would spend years trying to destroy. We returned to the dining room. The scene that greeted us was nothing like the elegant Christmas dinner that had begun the evening. My father slumped in his chair, his face in his hands. My mother stared at nothing, her makeup ruined, her fingers clutching the pearl necklace at her throat. Eleanor's pearls. Pearls that were supposed to come to me. Colleen sat rigid and silent, her earlier hysteria replaced by something colder. She was calculating even now, I realized, looking for angles, for escape routes, for someone else to blame. Sophie remained asleep on the corner couch, Derek's jacket draped over her small form. The one innocent person in the room, mercifully unaware of the destruction around her. Officer Reynolds spoke. "We have sufficient evidence to proceed. Based on the documents recovered and the prior complaint filed by Ms. Callahan, we have probable cause for arrest." Colleen's head snapped up. "Arrest! You cannot arrest us. It is Christmas." Officer Chen began reading rights. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you." My mother let out a sound like a wounded animal. She slid from her chair, dropping to her knees in front of me. Her hands grasped at my dress. "Please, Meredith, please, I am your mother. We can work this out. We can explain everything. Do not do this to your family." I looked down at her, at the woman who had signed away my inheritance, who had helped destroy my career, who had erased me from family photographs and Christmas dinners and every moment that mattered. "You stopped being my family," I said, "the day you decided I was worth more as a victim than a daughter." Aunt Vivian stepped forward. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was steady. "Before anyone goes anywhere, there is something Meredith needs to see." She reached into her purse and withdrew a yellowed envelope, its edges soft with age. "Eleanor gave this to me the week before she died," Vivian said. "She made me promise to keep it safe, to give it to Meredith when the truth finally came out." She held the envelope toward me. I saw my grandmother's handwriting on the front. Just 2 words. "For Meredith." The wax seal crumbled under my thumb like 4 years of lies finally giving way. Inside the yellowed envelope were 3 pages, covered front and back, in my grandmother's elegant handwriting. The same handwriting that had labeled birthday presents when I was a child. The same script that had signed permission slips when my parents forgot. The same hand that had written me letters during my first year of college when I was homesick and alone, and wondering if anyone in my family actually cared. "Everyone should hear this," I said. She wanted everyone to know. The room had gone silent. My father remained slumped in his chair. My mother knelt on the floor where she had fallen, tears streaking her ruined makeup. Colleen sat rigid, watching me with something between hatred and fear. Derek stood near the sleeping Sophie, protective and separate. Aunt Vivian pressed a handkerchief to her eyes. The police officers waited with professional patience. I began to read. "My dearest Meredith, if you are reading this, then what I feared has come to pass. I am writing this in the hospital 3 days before I expect to die. My body is failing, but my mind, despite what they want people to believe, is clear. I have made decisions that some in this family will not understand. They will try to undo them. This letter is my truth, preserved for the day you need it." I had to stop for a moment, hearing her voice through the words, the sharp clarity, the refusal to soften truth. This was the grandmother I remembered, fierce, honest, loving in ways that did not require performance. The letter continued with her assessment of my father. "Your father, my son, has been a disappointment to me for 30 years. He married for money and schemed for more. He sees people as tools and love as weakness. I tried to raise him better. I failed." My father did not look up. He sat motionless, absorbing the judgment of a dead woman he had spent years robbing. 3 days ago, he brought papers to my hospital bed. He said they were routine. I pretended to be confused, too tired to read. But I saw enough. He wanted power of attorney. He wanted control over everything I have spent my life building. He thought I was too weak to notice. Eleanor had known. Even in her final days, surrounded by vultures wearing family faces, she had seen through them. The second page addressed my mother. Your mother is more dangerous than your father. Victor acts from greed. Patricia acts from cruelty disguised as concern. She convinced your father that controlling you was protecting you. But I watched her. I saw how she treated you differently from Colleen. You were never the favorite. You were the scapegoat, the one they could blame when things went wrong, the one they could sacrifice when it suited them. My mother made a sound, something between a sob and a protest. She had always portrayed herself as the gentle peacemaker, the loving mother caught between difficult children. The letter stripped that mask away. Eleanor's words about Colleen were the harshest of all. Colleen learned well from her parents. She has your mother's manipulation and your father's ambition. When she was 16, I caught her forging your signature on a birthday card. A small thing, but telling. She laughed when I confronted her, said it was just a joke. It was never a joke, Meredith. It was practice. I looked at my sister. She had gone pale, her calculated composure finally cracking. Eleanor had seen the pattern decades ago, had watched it develop, had tried to warn me in her own way. The letter explained why she had chosen me. You are different from them, Meredith. I do not know how, but you are. When I was sick, you came. Not for the will, not for the money. You came because you loved me. You read to me when I could not see the words myself. You held my hand through the long nights when no one else visited. You are the only one who saw me as a person, not an inheritance. Tears were falling now, blurring the words. I remembered those visits. Driving 4 hours each way, sleeping in the hospital chair, reading Jane Austen aloud because Eleanor said it reminded her of her mother. I had thought no one noticed. No one cared. But she had seen everything. The third page contained Eleanor's warnings. Vivian told me something that broke my heart. They have been sabotaging your future. Anonymous letters, phone calls, Patricia and Colleen working together to ensure you never succeed. They want you dependent. Dependent people do not ask questions. They want you poor. Poor people cannot afford lawyers. Colleen's voice cut through the reading. She is lying. Grandmother was confused, demented. That letter is forged. Meredith wrote it herself to frame us. Aunt Vivian spoke before I could respond. I was there when Eleanor wrote it, Colleen. I watched her write every word over 3 nights. I witnessed her seal it with her own ring. And I have the hospital's visitor log showing you never came to see her. Not once in her final month. Meredith was there alone. The silence that followed was absolute. I returned to the letter for Eleanor's final instructions. I changed my will 3 times in my final year. Each time Victor found out. Each time he tried to intervene. This final version was done in secret, with a lawyer he does not know. The trust, the house, the company shares. Everything is meant for you. If they try to take it, fight. You have more strength than you know. Eleanor had prepared for this battle. She had known it would come. She had armed me the only way she could, with documentation and truth, and the memory of her belief in me. Colleen suddenly stood. This is ridiculous. We do not have to listen to this. That letter proves nothing. It is the ramblings of a dying woman who did not know what she was doing. James Whitmore stepped forward. Actually, the letter is corroborated by every piece of evidence we have gathered, the forged signatures, the fraudulent transfers, the career sabotage emails traced to this house. He opened another folder. Since we are discussing full disclosure, we have records of 11 anonymous emails sent to companies where Meredith applied for employment over 3 years. Writing analysis suggests 2 authors, some formal and corporate, some more emotional and personal. He looked at my mother. The formal ones match Patricia's communication patterns. Then at Colleen. The emotional ones contain details only a family member would know. One line from the emails was highlighted on the page he held up. She has a history of theft within her own family. I would not trust her with company resources. The same accusation they had made tonight. They had been rehearsing it for years. poisoning my reputation in advance, so that if I ever discovered the truth, no one would believe me. Colleen broke. This was your idea. She whirled on our mother. You came to me. You said we needed to protect the family. You said Meredith would waste the money. You said grandmother owed us more than she left us. Patricia scrambled to her feet. Do not put this on me. You volunteered to do the signatures. You said you had practiced. You said it was easy. I did what you told me to do. Colleen's voice rose to a scream. You and Dad planned everything. I just executed it. Officer Reynolds stepped between them. Ma'am, are you stating that you were instructed by your parents to forge documents? Colleen froze. The realization of what she had just admitted dawned on her face. I want a lawyer. You will have one. But what you have said has been noted. The officer turned to his partner. Officer Chen, please read the formal charges. She stepped forward, pulling papers from a folder. Victor Callahan, Patricia Callahan, Colleen Mercer. You are being served summons to appear for questioning regarding allegations of fraud, forgery, embezzlement, and potential elder abuse in connection with the estate of Eleanor Beaumont. Colleen began to sob. You cannot do this. It is Christmas. My daughter is here. Sophie stirred on the couch, disturbed by the noise. Derek quickly lifted her, carrying her toward the kitchen, away from the chaos. My mother made one last desperate grasp at my hands. Please, Meredith. I am your mother. Whatever I did because I love you. I wanted to protect you from making mistakes with all that money. Please, do not destroy this family. I looked at her. At the woman who had signed away my inheritance, who had helped write emails calling me a thief, who had kept me poor and struggling while she bought vacation homes with my grandmother's money. You destroyed it yourself, I said, years ago. I am just showing everyone the wreckage. The officers began leading them toward the door. My father went quietly, his fight completely drained. My mother wept and pleaded with every step. Colleen alternated between screaming and sobbing, her carefully constructed life collapsing around her. Aunt Vivian put her arm around me as we watched them go. Eleanor would be proud of you, she whispered. I looked down at the letter still clutched in my hands, at my grandmother's final words of love and warning. I know, I said. I just wish she could have seen it. The taillights of the police cars disappeared down the oak-lined driveway, and for the first time in 4 years, I could breathe. But the night was far from over. There were statements to give, decisions to make, and one small girl who needed someone to think about her future. James Whitmore drove me to the police station. Aunt Vivian followed in her own car. Derek came separately with Sophie asleep in the back seat, her small body curled beneath a blanket, mercifully unaware of the destruction that had consumed her family. Savannah at midnight on Christmas Eve was beautiful in the way only southern cities can be. Christmas lights adorned every historic home. Spanish moss hung silver in the streetlights. Families were inside, gathered around trees and tables, and the warmth of people who loved each other. The contrast to where I was heading felt almost cruel. The police station greeted us with fluorescent lights harsh enough to make me squint. The smell of stale coffee and industrial cleaner hung in the air. Someone had taped paper snowflakes to a bulletin board near the entrance, a small gesture of holiday spirit that seemed out of place against the gray walls and institutional furniture. A detective named Morrison met us in the lobby. He was in his 50s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake that told me he had seen everything twice and believed in very little. He led me to an interview room where I spent the next 2 hours walking through every detail of my case. The letter from the bank, the investigation with James, the evidence gathering, the timeline I had constructed over 6 months of sleepless nights. Detective Morrison recorded everything. He asked questions I had already answered for James, but I understood the need for official documentation. When we finished, he sat back in his chair and studied me with something like respect. I have seen a lot of family fraud cases, he said. This one is particularly thorough. Your preparation saved us months of investigation. How long have you been planning this? 6 months, I told him. Since the day I found out they had stolen everything my grandmother left me. He nodded slowly. And you waited until Christmas to confront them. I wanted them all in one place. I wanted them to have nowhere to hide. His expression said he understood more than I had spoken. When I emerged from the interview room, I found Derek waiting in the hallway. Sophie was asleep in a break room nearby, watched over by a female officer who had found a blanket and a pillow for the small couch. Derek looked exhausted, his face drawn with the weight of everything that had happened. "Meredith," he said, "I need to ask you something. It is about Sophie." I knew what was coming before he said it. Colleen's parents are arrested. My parents are gone. Her only other family is Aunt Vivian. And you. He took a breath. If something happens with my interview, if they decide to hold me for any reason, would you stay with her? Just until I am cleared. She trusts you. She loves you. And I cannot let her go to strangers on Christmas. I looked toward the break room where Sophie slept. Colleen's daughter, the child of the woman who had forged my signature, destroyed my career, stolen my inheritance. But Sophie was 7 years old. Sophie had run to hug me the moment I walked through the door. Sophie had remembered every birthday card I sent, even when no one else acknowledged my existence. "I will take care of her," I said. "Whatever she needs." Derek's shoulders dropped with relief. "Thank you. I know I have no right to ask. You have every right. You are her father. And you tried to warn me." His eyes filled with tears. "She talks about you," he said quietly. "She calls you the nice one. She always knew." The pleas began shortly after. First came a message from my mother. A detective informed me that Patricia was requesting to speak with me. She claimed she had information that could help everyone. James advised against it. "Anything she says is designed to manipulate," he warned. "She is looking for leverage." I told the detective no. I had nothing to say to her. Then my father's lawyer arrived. Richard Pemberton III, the Callahan family attorney for decades, wearing an expensive suit even at midnight. He requested a conversation with me about resolving this matter privately. "Your father wants you to know he is willing to make things right," Pemberton said. "Full restitution, every penny returned. A public apology if you want one. In exchange, the family asks that you decline to press charges. Let this be handled within the family as it should be." He paused, adjusting his cufflinks. "He is also prepared to discuss a significant additional settlement. For your trouble." James stepped in before I could respond. "Mr. Pemberton, your client is facing criminal charges filed by the state. Ms. Callahan's cooperation is a factor, but she does not control prosecution. And frankly, this conversation borders on witness tampering." I looked at Pemberton directly. 4 years. I spent 4 years wondering why I could not succeed. I ate ramen while they bought beach houses. I borrowed money for bus tickets while they drove luxury cars. And now he wants to buy his way out. I stood up. "Tell him no. Tell him there is no amount of money that purchases my silence. Tell him I am not for sale. I never was. That is why they had to steal from me." Pemberton left without another word. The final approach came in the form of a handwritten letter from Colleen, passed through an officer. I recognized the handwriting immediately. The same hand that had forged my signature 100 times. The letter claimed she had been coerced. Our parents had forced her participation. She begged me to remember the good times we had shared as sisters. She promised to make everything up to me if I would help her avoid prison. I read it twice, searching for anything genuine, any acknowledgement of what she had done, any real remorse. I found only manipulation dressed in sisterhood. I handed the letter to James. For the file, evidence of her attempting to influence a witness. In the early hours of the morning, I found myself alone with Aunt Vivian in a break room. Sophie was still sleeping. Derek was completing his statement. James was handling paperwork. For the first time all night, there was quiet. "I need to tell you something," Vivian said, "while I still have the courage." She wrapped her hands around a coffee cup that had long gone cold. I should have spoken years ago. I did not. And I am sorry. She told me everything. How Eleanor had confided in her during those final months, how she had learned about the suspicious documents, the pressure Victor was applying, the career sabotage. Eleanor had made her promise to protect me if something happened. But after Eleanor died, Victor came to me, Vivian said. He told me that if I ever revealed what I knew, he would destroy me too. He knew things about me, mistakes I made when I was younger, financial troubles, a relationship I kept hidden. He said he would expose everything, ruin my reputation, my friendships, my place in this community. Her voice broke. I was a coward. I chose my comfort over your future. I watched you struggle for 4 years. I could have stopped it. I did not. I sat with her words. The anger was there, underneath everything. Vivian could have saved me years of suffering. A single phone call, a single conversation, and my life would have been completely different. But looking at her now, I saw someone else Victor had victimized. Another person trapped by fear. You kept Eleanor's letter safe, I said finally, when they would have destroyed it. You came forward when it mattered most. I wish I had been braver, she whispered. He controlled all of us in different ways. At least you broke free. The clock on the wall showed midnight had passed. Christmas Day had begun in a police station. Detective Morrison returned with an update. All 3 had been formally booked. Victor, Patricia, and Colleen. Bail hearing scheduled for December 26th. Charges filed included multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. Elder abuse charges were pending further investigation. The district attorney is personally involved, Morrison added. This is going to be a major case. He asked the question I had been waiting for. Ms. Callahan, you have cooperated fully. The state will proceed regardless of your wishes. But I need to ask formally, do you wish to pursue civil recovery alongside the criminal prosecution? You have the right to seek full restitution through civil court. Given the evidence, you would likely win. But it means years of trials, depositions, public testimony. It is your choice. James spoke quietly beside me. You do not have to decide tonight. But I already knew. I thought about the 4 years of struggling, the ramen dinners, the rejected job applications, the nights I lay awake wondering what was wrong with me. I thought about my grandmother, alone in her hospital bed, trying to protect me even as death approached. I am not walking away, I said. I am pursuing everything. Criminal prosecution, civil recovery, full accountability. Detective Morrison nodded. Then we will see you at the courthouse. Outside the window, the first light of Christmas morning crept over Savannah. My gift this year was not wrapped in paper or ribbon. It was harder and colder and more valuable than anything under a tree. It was justice. And I was going to see it through. I had promised myself justice. It took 12 months, but I kept that promise. 1 year after that Christmas Eve, I stood in a Savannah courtroom and watched my family's empire finally collapse. The Chatham County Courthouse was a historic building, all polished wood and high ceilings, and the weight of 1,000 verdicts rendered within its walls. December cold pressed against the tall windows. I sat behind the prosecution table with James Whitmore beside me, no longer just my lawyer but a trusted friend forged in the fire of this battle. Aunt Vivian occupied a seat in the gallery. Derek sat a few rows back, his presence a quiet show of support. Sophie was not there. We had agreed to protect her from this. The judge called the proceedings to order. My father went first. Victor Callahan had spent months fighting the charges, hiring expensive attorneys, filing motion after motion, delaying the inevitable. In the end, the evidence was overwhelming. He pled guilty to reduced charges in exchange for the prosecution not pursuing the maximum sentence: fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit forgery. The judge read each count aloud. 4 years in federal prison. Eligible for parole in 2. Full restitution ordered for all documented theft. When the sentence was announced, my father did not look at me. He stared at the table in front of him, a broken man in a suit that no longer fit his shrunken frame. The patriarch who had ruled the Callahan family for decades had been reduced to a number in the federal prison system. My mother came next. Patricia had pled no contest, unable to face the prospect of trial testimony that would expose every detail of her cruelty. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Obstruction of justice. Her lawyer cited severe anxiety and depression as mitigating factors, the same excuses she had once used against me, now deployed in her own defense. 18 months, suspended to probation. She would surrender her passport, attend mandatory therapy, report to a probation officer weekly. The social queen of Savannah would spend the next year and a half under court supervision. Colleen fought the longest. 8 months of motions and delays and attempts to shift blame. She hired 3 different lawyers. She tried to negotiate immunity in exchange for testimony against our parents. Nothing worked. The evidence was too thorough. The documentation too complete. Forgery, fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. The charges stacked up like bricks in a wall. 3 years in state prison. When the verdict was read, my sister screamed. She pointed at me across the courtroom, her face twisted with rage. "This is your fault," she shrieked. "You did this to me." Bailiffs had to restrain her. The same finger that had pointed accusations at me over Christmas dinner now pointed from behind handcuffs. I watched them lead her away. I felt no triumph, only exhaustion, emptiness, and something like grief, not for them. For the family I had never really had. For the illusion finally and completely buried. The civil case settled 3 months after the criminal convictions. My family's lawyers knew they could not win. The only question was how much I would recover. The accounting took weeks. The trust fund had originally held $2.4 million. $143,000 remained when I discovered the theft. Restitution was ordered for the full amount, but reality intervened. My parents' assets were liquidated. Their Savannah home sold. The vacation property in Charleston seized. After legal fees and debts, the actual recovery came to approximately $1.1 million. The Victory Drive mansion was restored to my name. Mercer Property Holdings dissolved. The house my grandmother had loved, the home where I had spent my happiest childhood summers, was mine again. But 4 years of neglect showed in every corner. Peeling paint, overgrown gardens, a roof that leaked when it rained. It would take time and money to restore what they had allowed to decay. The company shares were more complicated. Grandmother Eleanor's 35% stake in Beaumont Properties returned to me, but the company itself had suffered. My father's mismanagement combined with the scandal had diminished its value significantly. Still, it was viable. It was my grandmother's legacy. And now I had a voice in the company she had built. The total recovery approached $2.3 million. Less than half of what had been stolen. Some theft leaves scars that money cannot heal. 4 years of career opportunities lost. The promotions I never received. The connections never made. My 20s spent struggling instead of building. No settlement could return those years. But it was enough. Enough to start over. Enough to build something new. The collapse of my family happened in stages, like a building slowly crumbling. My father reported to federal prison in March. Before he left, Callahan Holdings declared bankruptcy. Assets were seized, business relationships evaporated. The man who had once threatened to destroy Aunt Vivian could not even save himself. My mother moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of Savannah. Her former friends stopped returning calls. The country club quietly revoked her membership. I heard from Vivian that she told neighbors she was recovering from an illness, still unable to admit the truth, even to strangers. Colleen entered the state women's prison in April. Derek filed for divorce the week after her conviction. He received full custody of Sophie, with Colleen granted only supervised visitation. Her carefully curated social media presence went silent. The perfect life she had projected to the world, revealed as performance over substance. Derek moved to a modest house in a different neighborhood. He found legitimate work, building something real instead of living off stolen money. Away from Colleen's shadow, he became the father he had always wanted to be. I moved into my grandmother's house in January, 1 year and 1 week after that Christmas Eve. The moving truck held everything I owned from my Atlanta apartment. It did not take long to unload. 4 years of struggling had not left me with much. Walking through the mansion felt like stepping into memory. Dust sheets covered the furniture, cobwebs gathered in corners. But beneath the neglect, I could see the bones of something beautiful. The library where Eleanor had read to me. The kitchen where we baked cookies together. The garden where she taught me the names of flowers. I found her study on the second floor, a small room off the main bedroom that my father had never used. He considered it too feminine, too much like her. I opened the door and felt her presence wash over me. Her writing desk sat by the window, untouched. Drawers held papers, letters, photographs. And in the bottom drawer I found a box labeled in her handwriting. For Meredith, when you are ready. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me. All dated over 4 years, one for each month since her death. All unsent. My hands trembled as I realized what I was looking at. These were not written after Eleanor died. That was impossible. The dates stretched years past her death. She had written them before, prepared them in advance. One letter for every month of the years she knew she would not see, a grandmother's love reaching across death to guide me through the darkness she knew was coming. I opened the first one, dated for what would have been my 26th birthday, 1 year after she died. My dearest girl, she wrote, if you are reading this, I hope you are celebrating. I hope someone is making you cake. I hope you are surrounded by people who love you for who you are, not what you can give them. I could not continue. The tears came too fast, blurring her words until I could barely see. She had known. She had always known. And she had found a way to stay with me, even from beyond the grave. I sat in her study, surrounded by her letters, and I let myself grieve. Not for the family I had lost, for the grandmother who had loved me enough to prepare 4 years of guidance for a future she would never see. When Derek brought Sophie to visit a week later, I was ready to rebuild, ready to become the family Sophie deserved, ready to honor every word Eleanor had written. Eleanor's letters became my compass, each one a guide for a month she knew she would not see, filled with advice I desperately needed. 6 months after moving into the mansion, I finally understood what she wanted me to do with my second chance. The house transformation began in February. Contractors arrived to repair the roof first, then the plumbing, then the electrical systems that had been neglected for years. I involved myself in every decision: paint colors, floor refinishing, garden restoration. This was not just repair work, it was honoring what Eleanor had built. I learned the history as I worked. The mansion was constructed in 1892, one of the oldest surviving homes on Victory Drive. Eleanor purchased it in 1972, when women rarely owned property of this scale. She had restored it once before, in 1975, after her husband died and everyone expected her to sell. Instead, she poured her grief into rebuilding. Now I was the 3rd generation of women to bring these walls back to life. One of Eleanor's letters, dated for what would have been 18 months after her death, contained words that changed my direction. This house has survived wars and storms and neglect, she wrote, so will you. But survival is not enough. You must learn to thrive, find work that matters, build something that outlasts you. I looked around Savannah and saw what she meant. Historic homes everywhere falling into disrepair. Investors buying them, gutting their character, erasing their history to maximize profit. What if someone preserved them instead? What if someone did what Eleanor had done, what I was doing now? Restored rather than demolished, honored rather than exploited. The idea took root and grew. In March, I filed the paperwork for Beaumont Restoration LLC. Named for Eleanor's maiden name, the company she never got to create herself. The office was a converted carriage house behind the mansion, small but functional. Staff consisted of me and one part-time assistant named Grace, a retired schoolteacher who wanted something to keep her busy. The mission was simple: acquire neglected historic properties, restore them to their original character using period-appropriate materials and techniques, sell to buyers who valued preservation, or rent to families who needed beautiful homes at reasonable prices. Early months were brutal. Restoration costs more than renovation. Authentic materials are expensive. Skilled craftsmen who understand historic techniques are rare and in demand. Cash flow stretched thin despite the settlement money. The Callahan name did not help. The scandal had been covered by local news for months. Some sellers refused to work with me the moment they heard my name. More than once I watched interest cool when someone made the connection. "Are you not the one whose family was arrested?" I learned to lead with Eleanor's name instead. "I am Eleanor Beaumont's granddaughter, opened doors that Meredith Callahan closed." Her legacy still carried weight in this city. Her reputation for integrity and quality remained untarnished. I borrowed from her memory until I could build my own. The first project was a Victorian cottage on Jones Street. Abandoned for 7 years, scheduled for demolition in 60 days. I bought it at auction for $60,000. Everyone said I was crazy. The roof sagged, the floors were rotted through. Vines had grown through broken windows and taken over entire rooms. 4 months of careful work transformed it. We revealed original hardwood floors hidden under decades of carpet, restored 3 fireplaces that had been covered over, replanted the garden with period-appropriate flowers, installed lighting fixtures salvaged from other historic properties. We listed it at $220,000. It sold in 2 weeks. The buyers were a young couple expecting their first child. They walked through the finished house with tears in their eyes. "It feels like it has been loved," the wife said. I understood exactly what she meant. James Whitmore visited the finished cottage before the closing. His visits had become frequent over those months. Professional consultations that gradually extended into dinners, then walks through the historic district, then conversations that had nothing to do with legal matters. "You know," he said, looking around the restored rooms, "most people in your position would just invest the money, live off the interest. Take it easy. That is not who I am," I told him. "No." He smiled. "It is not. Eleanor would be proud." Something shifted between us that afternoon. I was not ready to name it yet, but I noticed his smile more than I had before. The online community found me by accident. I had joined a forum for people betrayed by family, a place where survivors of financial abuse and inheritance theft shared their stories. I posted anonymously at first, calling myself Savannah Survivor. Just the basics. Grandmother left me everything. Family forged my signature, stole millions. I fought back and won. The response overwhelmed me, hundreds of comments within days. "This happened to me too. I thought I was alone. How did you prove it? Please help me." Private messages flooded my inbox. People asking for advice. How did I find a lawyer? What evidence did I gather? How did I survive the family pressure without breaking? I answered every single one. Margaret was 62 years old, a widow living in Florida. Her only son had obtained power of attorney when she fell ill, then used it to transfer her retirement accounts to himself. He sold her car, took her credit cards, left her living on Social Security, barely able to afford food. "I do not know what to do," she wrote. "He is my son." Over the following weeks, I walked her through the process, connected her with legal aid organizations in Florida, helped her understand what documents to gather, stayed up late on video calls, reviewing evidence, offering encouragement when the fight seemed impossible. 6 months later, she sent a message that made me cry. "I got my money back. He is in jail. I could not have done it without you." My daughter asked how I found the strength. I told her a stranger on the internet believed me when no one else did. That was when I understood. My pain had purpose. My experience could help others navigate the same darkness. I was not just rebuilding my own life. I was lighting the way for people still lost. Sophie visited every other weekend that summer. Derek would bring her Saturday morning, sometimes staying for dinner, sometimes just dropping her off with a grateful smile and a promise to return Sunday evening. The mansion became her second home. We gardened together. I taught her the names of Eleanor's flowers the way my grandmother had taught me: roses, camellias, jasmine. She claimed a corner of the garden as her own, planting seeds with her small hands, watering them faithfully every visit. We baked in Eleanor's kitchen, the same recipes my grandmother had shared with me: chocolate chip cookies, peach cobbler, lemon pound cake, flour on our noses and laughter-filling rooms that had been silent too long. We read in the library. The same books Eleanor had read to me when I was Sophie's age: Charlotte's Web, Little Women, The Secret Garden. Sophie would curl against my side the same way I had curled against Eleanor, the cycle continuing despite everything that had tried to break it. One August afternoon, sitting on the porch swing, Sophie asked the question I had been dreading. "Auntie Meredith, when is Mommy coming home?" I took a breath. Colleen had 2 more years left on her sentence. Sophie understood a way, but not the reality of prison. "Your Mommy still has to stay where she is for a while," I told her. "She made mistakes, and she has to finish her consequence. But she loves you, and you will see her again." Sophie was quiet for a long moment. "Daddy says you are stronger than Mommy. He says that is why she was mean to you." "People are not mean because they are weak," I said carefully. "They are mean because they are scared." "Were you scared?" "I was terrified for a long time. You do not seem scared now." I pulled her closer. "I am not. Because I found people worth being brave for." December came, our first real Christmas in the restored mansion. The guest list included Aunt Vivian with her famous pecan pie, Derek and Sophie carrying a wrapped gift she had made herself, James arriving early to help set up, Grace from the office, the Hendersons from next door, an elderly couple who had known Eleanor for 40 years. The dinner was not perfect. I overcooked the turkey slightly. The mashed potatoes were lumpy, but no one cared. Sophie insisted on making the toast. She stood on her chair, apple juice raised like fine wine, and delivered words that silenced the room. "I am thankful for everyone here, and for Great-Grandma Eleanor who is watching from heaven, and for Auntie Meredith who never gave up." Her eyes found mine. "You are the bravest person I know." I could not speak. My throat was tight, my eyes wet. Finally, I managed words. "You make me want to be brave. All of you do." I raised my glass. "To Eleanor, and to everyone who became family." The table echoed back. "To family." Under the table, James found my hand and squeezed gently. For the first time in years, Christmas felt like it was supposed to feel. Like home, like hope, like the beginning of something good. Eleanor told me to let myself be happy, but some people see happiness as an invitation to return. 6 months after that first real Christmas, my mother decided she wanted back into my life. The attempts began small. A card in February, sympathy-themed oddly enough, with her handwriting on the envelope: "Thinking of you, missing you, Mom." No return address, sent through someone I did not recognize. I threw it away without responding. The second approach came through Aunt Vivian. Patricia called her, crying, begging her to intercede. "Please just ask Meredith to talk to me. I am her mother." Vivian reported the conversation reluctantly. "I told her it was not my place," she said. "But she is persistent." Something in Vivian's expression told me Patricia had tried manipulation there too, using guilt about family duty to pressure my aunt into becoming her messenger. The third attempt used a woman from my childhood church. She called to check in, her voice warm and concerned, but the conversation pivoted quickly. "Your mother is so heartbroken. She is not well. Do not you think life is too short for grudges?" I recognized the script. Patricia had always used others to deliver her messages, to create pressure from multiple directions, to make me feel surrounded. The fourth approach was flowers. A massive arrangement of white lilies and roses delivered to the mansion. The card read, "I know I do not deserve forgiveness, but I am asking anyway. Please, Meredith." The flowers were beautiful. I donated them to a nursing home that afternoon. Each attempt disrupted my peace. I had built something good, something real, and now familiar shadows crept at the edges. Not anger exactly. More like exhaustion at the predictability. Then the letter arrived. Someone left it on the porch, no postage. Patricia could not come herself because of her probation restrictions, but she had found a way. 8 pages in her careful handwriting, the kind of letter designed to overwhelm with volume. I read it at Eleanor's desk with coffee growing cold beside me. The opening positioned her as the brave one taking a risk. "My dearest Meredith, I do not know if you will read this. I would not blame you if you did not. But I have to try. You are my daughter." That has to mean something. The apology section used careful language. "I know we hurt you. I know we made terrible choices." Notice the we. Spreading blame. Minimizing her personal role. "We thought we were protecting you. We were wrong." Still using the protection narrative after everything. 2 years later, and she still could not write the words I stole from you. The suffering section detailed her difficult life. The small apartment, the lost friends, the health problems. Victor in prison, rarely writing. Colleen refusing to see her during visits. "I have lost everything, Meredith. Everything except hope that you might forgive me." The victim narrative, fully deployed. The change section claimed transformation. "I have been in therapy. I understand now why I did what I did. My own childhood, my fears about money. Psychological explanations that stopped short of actual accountability. I have changed. I am not the same person." But no specifics about what had changed. No acknowledgement of the career sabotage emails. No recognition of the magnitude of what she had taken from me. The closing used Eleanor as leverage. "I am not asking to go back to how things were. I am just asking for a chance. Coffee, a phone call, anything. Life is short. Your grandmother would have wanted us to reconcile." Using my dead grandmother, the woman they had robbed and manipulated in her final days, as a tool to manipulate me. The audacity stole my breath. I read the letter twice, looking for something real. A genuine admission, a specific apology, true accountability. I found only the same patterns dressed in therapy language. Patricia had learned new words, but not new behavior. That night I sat with memories I usually kept buried. There had been good moments. Age 8, Patricia braiding my hair before school. Age 10, a birthday cake with chocolate frosting and pink flowers. Age 12, my mother defending me to a teacher who had been unfair. These moments existed. They were real. But they were islands in an ocean of something else. The constant comparison to Colleen. "Why cannot you be more like your sister?" The criticism disguised as concern. "I am only saying this because I love you." The way achievements were minimized. That is nice, but Colleen got honors. The way failures were amplified. "I knew you would disappoint us." And then the sabotage years. Those anonymous emails Patricia had helped write. She has a history of theft within her own family. Every rejected job application, every closed door, my own mother's hand in my destruction. I understood the pattern now. The good moments were real but strategic. Enough warmth to maintain attachment. Enough cruelty to maintain control. The cycle of toxic love. Give just enough to keep them hoping. Take everything else. Eleanor's letter had warned me. Patricia acts from cruelty disguised as concern. My grandmother saw it decades ago. I was the last to understand. But I understood now. Later that night, as I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed with a notification. An Instagram message request from an unfamiliar account. No profile photo. The preview showed enough. "You think you have won." I opened it knowing exactly who had sent it. Colleen's message was everything Patricia's letter was not. No pretense of reconciliation, no performance of change. You think you have won, do you not? I am in here because of you. Because you could not let things go. We were family. Family handles things privately. But you had to make it public. You had to humiliate us. Mom cries every night, Dad is sick, and you are living in grandmother's house like you earned it. You did not earn anything. You just got lucky and got revenge. The message ended with a threat. When I get out, I am going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. No apology. No acknowledgement of the forgery, the theft, the sabotage. In Colleen's mind, she was the victim. I was the villain for exposing the truth. I looked at the two communications side by side. Patricia's letter in therapy language, appealing to family bonds. Colleen's message raw and threatening. Same family, same denial, different packaging. If Patricia had truly changed, she would have addressed Colleen's behavior, would have acknowledged that her older daughter was still threatening me. Instead, she was probably making excuses for Colleen right now, rationalizing, protecting. The family system remained intact. Victor blaming circumstances, Patricia playing victim, Colleen attacking the whistleblower. Nobody had actually changed. They had just run out of power. I understood then what forgiveness would actually mean. Not peace, but exposure. Not healing, but reopened wounds. Not family, but theater. I would be volunteering to be hurt again by people who still believed hurting me was justified. The next morning I sat at Eleanor's desk and wrote my response. I did not write a list of grievances. I did not explain my pain. I did not leave a door open. Patricia, I began, I am using your name because Mom implies a relationship we do not have. I received your letter. I read it carefully. I found apologies without specifics, change without evidence, requests without acknowledgement of what you took. You did not just steal money, you stole 4 years of my career. You stole my confidence. You stole my ability to trust. You helped write emails calling me a thief while you were the one stealing. Colleen messaged me last night. Threats and blame and no remorse. This is your family. This is what you raised. I do not hate you. Hate requires energy I have chosen to spend elsewhere, but I do not forgive you either. Not because I am bitter. Because forgiveness requires repentance, and you are still performing. Do not contact me again. Do not use others to contact me. Do not come to my home. If you violate these boundaries, I will pursue legal remedies. This is not negotiable. This is goodbye. I signed it with just my name. Not your daughter. Just Meredith. That afternoon I took both letters to the garden, to the fire pit Eleanor had used for autumn leaves. I struck a match and watched 8 pages of manipulation curl and blacken. Then Colleen's printed message, added to the flames. The smoke rose and disappeared. I felt nothing leave me. Because I realized I had already let go. This was just making it visible. I called James that evening. I made my decision. I told him. Which way? No contact. Permanent. I wrote her a final letter. Silence on the line. Then, how do you feel? I thought about it. Like I just locked a door I should have locked years ago. That is not cold, Meredith. That is healthy. I know, I said. I finally know. Forgiveness, I understood now, did not require reconciliation. It meant releasing them from my thoughts, choosing peace over their drama, refusing to audition for their love anymore. I forgave them for me, not for them, and forgiving them did not mean I had to see them again. Boundaries gave me something I never had before. Space to grow into who I was meant to be. 1 year after I burned my mother's letter, 3 years after that Christmas Eve that changed everything, I stood in Eleanor's garden and finally understood what she had been trying to teach me all along. December frost coated the garden. Morning sun broke through the Spanish moss, casting golden light across the restored grounds. The Victory Drive mansion gleamed with new life, fresh paint on the shutters, repaired railings on the wraparound porch, windows that sparkled in the winter light. A brass plaque by the front door read, Beaumont House, established 1892, restored 2024. 3 years of work had transformed more than the building. Beaumont Restoration now employed 8 people full-time. We had completed 12 historic home restorations across Savannah. The local magazine had featured us in their fall issue. Preserving the past, building the future, the headline read. The waiting list of properties stretched months into the future. More work than I could handle, a good problem to have. The settlement money had been invested wisely. Business profits were reinvested into new projects. I was not wealthy by Callahan standards, but I was free, genuinely, completely free. Money earned, not stolen, success built, not inherited through theft. I walked through the mansion that morning, touching walls that had witnessed 3 generations of women fighting to survive. Eleanor's study had become my home office, still decorated with her photographs, her books, her presents. The box of letters sat on a shelf, nearly empty now. One envelope remained. I had saved it for today. 3 years to the day since everything changed. The guests began arriving in the late afternoon. Aunt Vivian came first, carrying her famous pecan pie and wearing a smile that had grown easier over the years. She had moved into the carriage house 6 months ago. Too big a house for one old woman, she said of her previous place. Now we shared dinners most nights, 2 survivors healing side by side. Derek arrived with Sophie and his new wife Sarah, a kindergarten teacher he had married in October. Sophie was 10 now, taller and more confident, but still possessing those bright eyes that saw the world with uncomplicated clarity. She ran to me the moment she crossed the threshold. Auntie Meredith, I made you something. A handmade ornament. The mansion rendered in glitter and felt, slightly lopsided, absolutely perfect. 3 years of her ornaments now hung on my Christmas tree, each one a marker of healing. Derek had become the father he always wanted to be once he escaped Colleen's shadow. At his wedding, he had pulled me aside. Thank you, he said. You freed all of us, not just yourself. Sophie had asked me at that wedding if I would ever get married. I had laughed and glanced across the room to where James Whitmore stood watching me with soft eyes. Maybe, sweetheart. When the right moment comes. James arrived early, as he always did now, to help with preparations. He moved through the mansion like he belonged there, because he did. What began as a professional relationship had evolved into friendship, then into something neither of us rushed to name. Our first official date had been 8 months ago. He brought flowers from Eleanor's favorite shop without being told. I knew then. Grace from the office came with her husband. The Hendersons from next door, the elderly couple who had known Eleanor for 40 years. Mrs. Henderson said the same thing she always said. She would be so proud of you, dear. I believed her. Before dinner, I slipped away to Eleanor's study. One envelope remained in the box, dated for this month, for this Christmas, 3 years after her death. My hands were steady as I broke the seal. I had done this many times, but knowing this was the last letter made the moment different. After this, no more new words from my grandmother, just memory and legacy. My dearest Meredith, she wrote, if you have waited until now to read this, you have shown more patience than I ever had. 3 years. That is how long I estimated it would take. For the truth to emerge, for the battles to be fought, for you to build something new from the ashes. If I am right, you are no longer the scared girl who watched me die. You are the woman I always knew you could become. I had to pause. Her voice, reaching across death, still knowing me better than I knew myself. I am sorry I could not protect you while I lived, she continued. I tried to leave you tools instead. Money, property, these letters. But the most important thing I left you was already inside you. I just helped you find it. You were never weak, Meredith. You were buried. There is a difference. The next section contained the wisdom she had spent a lifetime learning. By now you have learned what took me decades to understand. Family is not blood. It is choice. Home is not a building. It is people who stay. Forgiveness is not weakness. Boundaries are not cruelty. And justice, real justice, is not revenge. It is living well. It is thriving in spite of those who wanted you to fail. The final paragraphs blurred through my tears. This is my last letter, but not my last presence in your life. Every time you restore a house, I am there. Every time you help someone fight for what is theirs, I am there. Every time you choose love over fear, I am there. You carry me forward, Meredith. That is what legacy means. Now put down this letter and go live. I have given you all the words I have. The rest of the story is yours to write. Make it a good one. All my love, across time and death and everything between. Your grandmother, Eleanor. I pressed the letter to my heart. The last words. The final gift. But not really final. Eleanor lived in everything I had built. Dinner that evening was nothing like the Christmas 3 years before. That night had held accusations, police, handcuffs. Tonight held laughter, warmth, belonging. Same season, same holiday, different universe. The table overflowed with people who had earned their places. Vivian telling stories about Eleanor as a young woman, Derek and Sarah holding hands while Sophie demonstrated her latest dance moves. James refilling wine glasses, making sure everyone was comfortable, Grace and her husband debating local politics, the Hendersons reminiscing about neighborhood history. Sophie insisted on making the toast. 3rd year running, she stood on her chair, apple juice raised high. I am thankful for everyone here, and for great-grandma Eleanor who is watching from heaven, and for Auntie Meredith who never gave up. Her eyes found mine. You are the bravest person I know. I could not speak for a moment, throat tight, eyes wet. Finally, I managed words. You make me want to be brave. All of you do. I raised my glass. To Eleanor, and to everyone who became family. The table echoed back. To family. Under the table, James found my hand. Squeezed gently. This was what safety felt like. This was what love was supposed to be. After the guests left, I stood alone in Eleanor's garden. Fairy lights twinkled in the darkness. I thought about everything that had brought me here. 4 years of theft. 3 years of rebuilding, the girl I had been, the woman I had become, the family I lost, the family I found. The lessons had crystallized into truths I would carry forever. Blood relation guarantees nothing. Character defines worthiness. Survival is not enough. Thriving is the real victory. Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. Boundaries protect peace. Justice is not revenge. It is refusing to let them win. Family is not who you are born to. It is who shows up and stays. The people who hurt me expected me to break. Instead, I built a life they could never touch. James joined me on the porch. 2 mugs of coffee. Comfortable silence. You okay? Better than okay. He smiled. Eleanor would be proud, I know. I looked at the garden she planted, the house she built, the life she wanted for me. If you are listening to this story, really listening, maybe you recognize something. Maybe you have been accused by the people who should protect you. Maybe you have been stolen from. Money, time, opportunities, dignity. Maybe you are wondering if you are strong enough to fight back. I can tell you from the other side. You are. Not because you are special. Because you are human. And humans survive. We adapt. We rebuild. But we cannot do it alone. I had Eleanor's letters. I had James. I had Vivian and Derek and Sophie. I had strangers on the internet who believed me when no one else did. And now, if you have made it this far, you have me. My story. My proof that it gets better. I want to hear your story. Not because I need to know, but because you need to tell it. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you are from. Tell me what you survived. Or tell me what you are still fighting. Every story matters. Every voice deserves to be heard. I spent 4 years thinking I was alone. I was not. Neither are you. If this story helped you, if it gave you hope or courage or just reminded you that karma is real, hit that like button. Not for me. For the algorithm. Because every like tells the system that stories like ours matter, that women like us deserve to be heard. And if you want more stories like this, stories about ordinary people fighting back against impossible odds, subscribe, turn on notifications. Because there are more stories coming, more people who refuse to stay silent. Every single one of them deserves a witness. James asked me once what Eleanor's final letter said. "Make it a good story," I told him. He smiled. "Are you?" I thought about that Christmas 3 years ago. The accusations, the fear, the moment I decided to stop being a victim. I thought about everyone who tried to break me, and everyone who helped me stand. I thought about the mansion at my back, the man at my side, the future finally open. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." And somewhere I swear I felt Eleanor smiling. This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.